Security, remove her. She's out of order. Vice President J.D. Vance's command cracked through the Capitol like a gunshot before 38 million Americans watching live. Guards lunged forward, the chamber froze, and Jasmine Crockett raised a single pen like a weapon of truth. What words could she unleash that would shatter the vice president and ignite a nation? Hold up. If you care about the truth in politics, hit like, share, and subscribe, because in just seconds, you'll see the part they never wanted America to hear. The cameras cut to her face. Live before millions of Americans, Jasmine Crockett sat in the chamber, eyes steady, jaw tight. For a moment, the Capitol felt like it was holding its breath. And as the nation leaned closer to their screens, her story came rushing back like a shadow of memory. South Texas. A small apartment where the heat pressed in and sirens screamed through the night. Her mother, working 2, sometimes 3 jobs, fighting just to keep the lights on. An empty fridge, an exhausted smile, and a little girl learning early that life would never hand her anything. That little girl was Jasmine. While others dreamed about dances and football games, she worked counters, defended classmates who couldn't fight for themselves, and watched friends fall through cracks too wide to climb out of. Those nights etched scars on her, but they didn't break her. They made her fierce. Flash forward. Law school. Nobody believed she'd make it, but she did. The first in her family to walk the stage wearing the cap and gown like armor. Big firms came calling, but she turned them down. She chose courtrooms where poor families stood alone, where the system swallowed people whole. She became their shield. Now the camera lingers on her in Congress. Not polished, not rehearsed, but forged by survival. Every look, every pause carries the weight of mothers, workers, and forgotten soldiers she's sworn to fight for. And in this chamber tonight, everyone watching can feel it. Jasmine Crockett isn't here to play politics. She's here to make history. The camera pans wider. The chamber looks like a pressure cooker. Bright lights, restless whispers, every eye fixed on the clash that's about to erupt. Millions are watching, waiting, knowing this isn't just another hearing. This is a showdown. And across from Jasmine sits Vice President J.D. Vance. Once a small-town story of hardship, now a hardline voice of power. He leans back in his chair, arms folded, carrying the confidence of Trump's chosen heir. To his supporters, he's a fighter. To his critics, he's a hammer looking for something to break. The air between them feels electric. Vance represents the muscle of America First politics. Tough on immigration, hostile to social programs, relentless in his crusade against the very people Jasmine has spent her life defending. It's not just policy, it's personal. Every word out of his mouth cuts against the scars etched into her childhood. The chamber senses it. Staffers scribble nervously, reporters grip their pens tighter, cameras tilt to catch every twitch. Even the marble walls seem to lean in, as if history itself wants a better look. 2 stories, 2 Americas, one built on shutting doors, the other on prying them open. And tonight, under the blinding lights of the Capitol, they're on a collision course no one can stop. The gavel strikes. A sharp crack echoes through the chamber, and just like that, every whisper dies. Across America, living rooms fall silent as millions lean closer to their screens. This isn't politics as usual. It feels like a trial for the soul of the nation. The cameras cut between 2 faces, Jasmine Crockett and Vice President J.D. Vance, 2 extremes under the same blinding lights. Her eyes steady, carrying the weight of every worker and mother she's sworn to defend. His gaze cold, confident, daring her to step out of line. Journalists huddle in the back, their fingers flying over keyboards, knowing whatever happens tonight will dominate the headlines. In the gallery, citizens shift in their seats, sensing the storm about to break. Some stare at Jasmine with hope. Others watch Vance with clenched fists, ready for him to strike. And for a moment, there's only silence. A silence so heavy it presses down on every chest, inside the chamber and across the nation. Jasmine's hand rests on her pen, steady as stone. Vance's lips curl, already sharpening into attack. But would her voice survive the storm about to hit the Capitol? Vice President J.D. Vance leans forward, his voice slicing through the chamber. Our borders are wide open. Migrants flood in, stealing jobs from hardworking Americans. And while they march in, our own citizens are left in unemployment lines. His words land heavy, sharp, designed to ignite fear. Cameras zoom in, catching the smirk tugging at his lips as the chamber stiffens. He pounds the table, each word echoing like a gavel of his own. Every paycheck lost, every factory closed. Blame it on them. And tell me, Congresswoman, where were you when those factories shut down? With the people or with your party? Supporters in the gallery nod. Murmurs ripple, and for a moment it feels like his fire might consume the room. But Jasmine doesn't flinch. She leans into the microphone, her voice calm but razor sharp. Immigrants don't steal jobs. They build America. They bleed for America, and they pay for freedoms others take for granted. The chamber stirs. A camera catches an older veteran in the gallery, his eyes welling up as he nods slowly. Beside him, a young mother clutches her daughter tighter, whispering, "She's speaking for us." Jasmine presses on, her tone rising with each sentence. It's not immigrants closing factories. It's greed. Her words cut deeper than statistics. They land like punches of lived truth. For the first time, Vance shifts in his chair. The confidence flickers. The nation watches, breath held, knowing this is no longer a debate. It's a battle for who defines the American dream. Vance's jaw tightens. His knuckles slam the table with a crack that makes the microphones jump. His voice booms across the chamber, cold and sharp. Enough! Security, remove her! She's out of order, and this chamber will not be turned into her personal stage. The command hangs in the air like smoke. For a second, even the cameras hesitate. Then two guards step forward, their heavy boots echoing against the marble floor. Every eye turns to Jasmine. She doesn't move. She doesn't blink. Her hands rest on the desk as steady as stone, while the air thickens with dread. The chamber feels smaller, suffocating, as if history itself is holding its breath. On the Republican side, smirks spread like wildfire. Some lean back in their chairs, satisfied, already imagining her being dragged out on live television. On the Democratic side, jaws tighten, whispers fly, fear and fury colliding in their eyes. The guards draw closer. Each step is louder than the last. Somewhere in the gallery, a gasp escapes. A mother pulls her child against her chest. The veteran's fists clench around the armrest, his face trembling with anger. Vance leans back, lips curling in triumph. To him, this is power, to silence her voice in front of millions. What greater victory could there be? But Jasmine Crockett still hasn't moved. Calm, unshaken, her eyes lock onto his across the chamber. And in that frozen moment, every viewer at home knows something is about to explode. The guards are only a step away when Jasmine moves. Not back, not aside, but forward. Slowly, deliberately, she lifts the pen from her desk. For a heartbeat, the chamber wonders if she's surrendering. Then, crack! The pen slams against the wood, a single strike that ricochets like a judge's gavel. The sound freezes the room. Every head jerks toward her. Cameras zoom so close the glint in her eyes floods America's living rooms. And then her voice cuts through the silence. Steady, defiant, unshakable. If you silence me, you silence America. The words detonate like thunder. The gallery gasps. Some wipe tears before they even realize they're crying. On the floor, Pelosi is the first to rise. Clapping so hard her hands turn red. One by one, Democrats stand beside her, the applause spreading like wildfire. In the crowd, the old veteran pounds his cane against the marble, eyes burning with pride. The young mother squeezes her daughter's hand, whispering, "That's for us." And across the nation, millions lean closer to their screens, breath caught in their chests. Vance's smirk falters. The order he barked now hangs hollow in the air. Power was supposed to silence her, but instead her defiance has made her unstoppable. The chamber erupted, but this was only the beginning. For a heartbeat, silence grips the chamber. Jasmine's words still hang in the air, sharp as glass, unshaken by power. Then one voice rises from the gallery. "Let her speak!" Another follows louder, angrier. Within seconds, it's no longer a whisper. It's a storm. "Let her speak! Let her speak!" The chant rolls through the chamber like an earthquake, rattling papers, shaking the air itself. Democrats leap to their feet, clapping, shouting, their voices joining the crowd above. The sound swells, wild and uncontrollable, as if the people themselves have broken through the marble walls. The cameras swing desperately, capturing every angle. Pelosi standing tall, Bernie Sanders pounding the desk in rhythm with the chant. Faces in the gallery lit with fire, then the lens cuts outside, to the Capitol steps. Thousands of citizens gathered under giant screens roar in unison, their chants rising like a tidal wave. The echo bounces off stone pillars, surges down Constitution Avenue, and shakes the city itself. Inside, chaos consumes the chamber. Vance hammers the desk, his voice cracking as he screams into the microphone, "Order! Order!" But no one listens. His words vanish beneath the chant, drowned like pebbles thrown into a raging sea. The harder he shouts, the smaller he looks, once a towering figure of authority, now a man screaming against the wind. In the gallery, the old veteran is on his feet, tears streaking his cheeks, pounding his cane against the marble floor. Each strike is a drumbeat of history. Beside him, the young mother lifts her child high, both shouting until their voices break. Let her speak. This is no longer a hearing. It is a revolt, live on national television. And for the first time, millions watching at home know the truth. J.D. Vance has lost the chamber, and Jasmine Crockett has become its voice. The chant thunders on, echoing from the gallery, spilling out into the streets. And then Jasmine rises. Slowly, with calm that cuts sharper than rage, she steps toward the microphone. The chamber hushes, not by order, but by awe. Her voice comes steady, carrying the weight of 1,000 untold stories. I've seen mothers work 3 jobs and still put their children to bed hungry. I've seen veterans in uniform salute this flag, only to be left begging on our streets. And I've seen workers, men and women who built this country, discarded like broken tools when the factory doors closed. Each word paints a picture more powerful than numbers ever could. The cameras catch Pelosi's eyes glistening, Sanders bowing his head, the gallery leaning forward as if afraid to miss a breath. Jasmine doesn't stop. They tell us immigrants are the problem. No, the problem is greed. The problem is leaders who would rather divide us than fix what's broken. The problem is forgetting the people who carry this nation on their backs. Outside, thousands fall silent, then erupt into cheers. Across living rooms in Ohio, Texas, New York, families lean closer to their screens. An old steel worker grips his wife's hand, whispering, "She's telling our story." A young immigrant mother in California wipes her tears and whispers to her son, "Listen, she's fighting for us." Jasmine's voice trembles, but not with fear, with fire. America isn't for the powerful. It's for mothers, workers, soldiers, and we will not be silenced. In that moment, the Capitol is no longer marble and power. It is a mirror reflecting the pain and pride of millions. And through that mirror, one truth shines clear. Jasmine Crockett isn't just speaking for herself. She's speaking for America. The roar of applause rolls like thunder, but the cameras don't linger on the crowd. They cut tight, right onto Vice President J.D. Vance. His jaw clenches, his lips twitch. For the first time all night, the man who tried to silence a congresswoman looks rattled. He grips the edge of the table, knuckles white, eyes darting between the guards who failed to remove her and the Democrats who now stand united, applauding with fire in their eyes. The smirk that once played across his face has vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. And then Jasmine leans closer to the mic. Her voice doesn't rise. She doesn't need it to. Calm, deliberate, every word landing like a hammer. Senator Vance, you may own this room, but America belongs to its people, and they're watching. The chamber erupts again, louder than before. Pelosi claps until her hands sting. The gallery surges to its feet, shouts drowning out the last shred of order. On the streets outside, the crowd roars as if the words traveled straight through the walls. Social media ignites. Phones buzz. Hashtags race up the screen. Within minutes, Let Her Speak rockets to #1. Trending coast to coast, clips of Jasmine's defiance flood TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, millions sharing the moment in real time. Reporters scramble, shouting into cameras, their voices breaking with excitement. On CNN, Anderson Cooper stares into the lens, shaking his head. Ladies and gentlemen, history isn't just happening, it's happening live. And across America, from steel towns to suburbs, families sit frozen, knowing they've witnessed something no headline could capture. History wasn't written in ink that night. It was carved into the nation's memory. The night doesn't cool down. It explodes. Within minutes of the gavel slamming shut, every major network cuts from their regular programming. CNN plays the clip on loop. Vance barking the order, guards stepping forward, Jasmine striking the pen like a gavel, and that final sentence that shook the nation. Fox News scrambles, anchors speaking over one another, some condemning her defiance, others admitting the moment was impossible to ignore. MSNBC frames it as a turning point, a modern echo of the civil rights floor fights, one analyst calls it. On every channel, her face fills the screen. Commentators can barely contain themselves. Words like historic, seismic, and unprecedented fly through the airwaves. A senior journalist leans into the camera, voice unsteady. We are witnessing what may be remembered as the people's gavel moment. Social media is a wildfire. The clip racks up millions of views before midnight. Celebrities retweet it. Veterans post their own stories. Teachers and nurses flood comment sections with praise. Hashtag Let Her Speak isn't just trending, it's dominating. In studios across New York and Los Angeles, producers scramble, cutting together montages, replaying her words against swelling music. The same 10-second clip of Jasmine raising that pen is dissected from every angle, slowed down, replayed in silence, replayed with crowd noise. It feels less like news now and more like prophecy. And across the country, as Americans stay glued to their screens, one question beats louder than the headlines. Was this the moment the balance of power in Washington began to shift? Far from the marble halls of Washington, in a small living room in Ohio, a steelworker in his 50s sits hunched over the TV. His hands are calloused, his face lined with decades of labor. When Jasmine's words echo through the screen, his eyes water. He whispers to his wife, "She just said what I've felt for years." In California, a young immigrant mother sits cross-legged on the floor, her son asleep in her lap. Tears stream down her face as she presses a hand to her chest. "Finally," she murmurs, voice cracking, "someone speaks for us." Across the country, diners, bars, and union halls buzz as the clip replays. Patrons stop mid-bite. Strangers exchange glances. Conversations turn into debates. Everywhere the same question. How did one woman turn a command to silence into a rallying cry for millions? Online, the numbers skyrocket. By morning, Jasmine's defiance racks up 20 million views on TikTok, 15 million on Twitter, millions more on Facebook and YouTube. Hashtags multiply. Let her speak. Voice of the people. The Gave L moment. Comment sections flood with stories. Nurses, truck drivers, veterans, each saying the same thing. She spoke for me. In a farmhouse in Iowa, 3 generations gather around a laptop, replaying the moment over and over. A grandfather who once marched for civil rights wipes his eyes and tells his grandson, "Remember this, you're watching history repeat, but this time, it's her leading the charge." And just like that, Jasmine Crockett isn't just a congresswoman anymore. She's become a symbol, etched into the daily lives of Americans who thought no one in power even knew they existed. By dawn, Washington is already shaking. The clip has been played so many times it feels burned into the nation's eyes, and lawmakers can't escape it. In Republican halls, whispers turn into arguments. Some praise Vance for trying to enforce order. Others mutter that he handed Jasmine the very spotlight she needed. The divide grows wider. Hardliners call her defiance a stunt, a disgrace to Congress. But moderates shift uncomfortably, glancing at poll numbers, at trending hashtags, at the flood of support pouring in from across the country. For the first time, cracks appear in the wall of loyalty around the vice president. On the Democratic side, the mood is electric. Leaders who once kept their distance now rally behind Jasmine, hailing her as the conscience of the chamber. One senior figure calls her the voice of America's forgotten. Another whispers to reporters that the party hasn't seen this kind of fire since the civil rights era. Cable news runs panels deep into the night. Analysts argue whether Jasmine has just launched herself onto the national stage for good, One commentator leans forward, eyes wide. We may be looking at the birth of a new political force, not crafted by consultants but forged in defiance. In the Capitol itself, aides rush between offices, phones buzzing, strategies shifting. Everyone can feel it. The ground beneath them isn't steady anymore. Something has cracked open, something bigger than party lines. The echo of her words was no longer just in the chamber. It was across the nation. The storm outside never truly quieted, but inside her office, Jasmine finally sat alone. Piles of letters and emails had already begun to flood in, hundreds, then thousands, stacked on her desk, glowing on her screen. Each one carried a piece of America, raw and unfiltered. A steelworker from Ohio wrote about losing his job to a factory shutdown, thanking her for saying what no one in power dared to admit. A veteran from Georgia described sleeping in his car, saluting a flag that had long forgotten him. A nurse in Michigan confessed she had nearly given up hope, until she heard Jasmine's voice that night. One letter she held the longest, neat handwriting on lined paper from a high school teacher in her 60s. You gave my students hope, it read. They watched you stand against silence, and for the first time, they believed their voices could matter too. Her hands trembled as she folded it shut. These weren't just stories. They were burdens passed into her care. Every sentence pressed heavier on her shoulders, yet lit something brighter in her chest. She realized the truth. This wasn't about one night, one speech, or one clash with a vice president. This was about carrying millions who had been ignored for too long. As she gazed out at the Capitol dome glowing against the night sky, Jasmine Crockett knew her fight had only begun, and the weight of a nation's hope now rested in her hands. The next morning, the nation woke up to a new headline. Every network ran a special. Bold letters stretched across screens. The Voice America tried to silence. The footage replayed on loop. Vance barking the order, guards closing in, Jasmine's pen slamming down like a gavel of the people. Civil rights leaders appeared on talk shows, voices trembling with memory. Some compared the moment to Martin Luther King standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. One elder activist put it plainly, that wasn't just a hearing, that was history speaking through her. In diners across the Midwest, the debate crackled over coffee cups. Truck drivers paused mid-bite, saying, that woman's got more guts than the whole chamber combined. In church halls, pastors wove her words into sermons about courage and truth. On late-night radio, callers lined up for hours telling their own stories of being silenced, only to end with the same refrain. She spoke for me. The moment had become bigger than politics. It was alive in classrooms where teachers replayed the clip, in factory break rooms where workers gathered around a single phone, in family kitchens where generations sat together, watching Jasmine's defiance again and again. America hadn't just witnessed a confrontation. It had witnessed an awakening. And in every corner of the country, people whispered the same thought, that one voice, once nearly erased, had become a mirror, reflecting who they were and who they wanted to be. The sun dipped low over Washington, painting the sky in golden fire. Outside the Capitol, the crowd that had once roared still lingered, unwilling to leave, as if the walls themselves had absorbed their chants. And then, Jasmine stepped out. She stood tall at the top of the steps, her silhouette framed against the glowing dome. Cameras flashed, microphones pushed forward, but she didn't need to speak. Her presence alone carried the weight of the night before, the echo of every mother, every worker, every soldier she had invoked. For a moment, the city fell quiet. Reporters hushed, the crowd leaned in, and the world seemed to hold its breath. And then the narration came, not shouted, not forced, but steady, like truth itself. One woman, one sentence, one moment that reminded America, democracy only lives when we refuse to be silent. Applause broke out, rising like a wave, rolling down the steps and into the streets. Strangers hugged, veterans saluted, parents lifted their children onto their shoulders to remember the sight. Across the country, millions at home felt the same chill, the realization they had just witnessed a turning point. This wasn't just Jasmine Crockett's fight anymore. It belonged to the people who saw themselves in her stand, the millions who had been quiet too long. And so the story ends with a question that refuses to fade. If you were in that chamber, would you have stood and said, "Let her speak"? If this moment stirred something in you, don't stay silent. Like, share, and subscribe to First Shock, where voices rise and truth can't be silenced. Tap the bell, because tomorrow it could be your voice that needs to be heard. What part of Jasmine's stand hit you hardest? Tell us in the comments. Your story matters and your voice belongs here. This dramatized story is inspired by real struggles and real people. All characters and dialogue are fictionalized for commentary and education. It is not intended to defame or mislead, but to inspire reflection and civic awareness. Thanks for watching.